This is the Microsoft Surface Precision Mouse. This is the Logitech MX Master 2S. Which one's better? Hi, I'm Mark from PC World, and this is the Microsoft Surface Precision Mouse, a mouse that Microsoft would like to be sold with surfaces. Surface devices of all sorts. It was sold originally a little bit late last year. It retails for about $100 and weighs about 0.3 pounds. It is a mouse that uses Bluetooth 4.0 to 4.2 low energy and is sensitive to about 400 to 3200 dots per inch. It has 6 buttons that are reconfigurable and uses a technology called Smart Switch to switch between 3 different PCs, include via a little button down here at the bottom, as well as some interesting configurable software that we'll talk about later. This is the Logitech MX Master 2S. It too is the flagship mouse from Logitech. It too was sold originally a little bit late on the latter half of last year. It retails for a little under $100 and has 7 configurable buttons. It also weighs about 0.3 pounds and uses Bluetooth low energy to connect to up to 3 different PCs. The thing about Logitech though is it also uses something called the Logitech Unifying Receiver, which is a small USB dongle, fits inside of a USB port, and allows you to connect a PC that uses Windows 7, or simply as an alternative option in an environment where you have lots of Bluetooth radios going on. It provides sort of interference-free communication. Now, the Logitech MX Master 2S uses 200 to 4000 dots per inch. It has 7 reconfigurable buttons, and it has a technology called Flow, which allows it to shift automatically between up to 3 different PCs. So let's talk about usability. Now, the Microsoft Surface Precision Mouse is a little bit more neutrally slanted. And by that I mean it's a little bit more friendly to both lefties and righties. You can see that it has a less pronounced tilt and kind of approximates some of the ambidextrous mice that you see already in the market. On the front, it has the thumb wheel, which allows you to scroll either from an articulated standpoint, which allows you to sort of bump down menu items, or if you punch this button right here, it switches it to smooth scrolling, which allows you to sort of zoom up and down a web page. On the side, it has 3 thumb buttons. These thumb buttons default to sort of forward in a web browser, back in the web browser, and sort of a middle option, which is configurable. It also has this nice pronounced flaring thumb rest, which is comfortable if you're working with it as a right-handed user. You can see, for example, that those thumb buttons are pretty easily accessible to a right-handed user, and again, the left and right click buttons are comfortable as well. I'm ambidextrous to some extent. I actually prefer mousing left-handed. I'm traditionally more of a lefty, and this is actually a comfortable mouse both from a left-handed and a right-handed perspective. I can go ahead and put my hands here. The thumb buttons become more of a ring finger buttons, but they're actually fairly accessible if I do a little bit of maneuvering, and I can rest my pinky finger and my index finger, or my ring finger, sort of on the side of the mouse. Again, comfortable for right-handers as well as left-handers. The Logitech MX Master 2S, however, is a much more pronounced right-handed mouse, and you can see that from sort of the tilt of the mouse. If you look at it, it's much more geared towards tilting towards the right-handers. It too has a thumb button in the front of it that switches between articulated scrolling and smooth scrolling. This button right here, unlike the Microsoft Surface Precision Mouse, is configurable. So if you want this to become a Cortana button, you can. The buttons on the left and right click go back a little bit further. I think that's a little bit more friendly to people with smaller hands. And conversely, the thumb rest is actually larger. It's a little bit more friendly to people who have larger hands. If I rest my hand here as a right-handed user, very comfortable, in fact. It's more comfortable than the Surface Precision Mouse. It tracks very smoothly over a mouse pad. One of the interesting features about this is the fact that not only, of course, it doesn't have 2 mouse buttons here, actually, as opposed to 3 on the Surface Precision Mouse, but it has what's a thumb wheel and a horizontal thumb wheel at that. It's more geared towards Excel. By default, it scrolls horizontally within a web browser. Within the web page of a web browser, I should say, as well as a spreadsheet. If you're using a spreadsheet like Excel, it's quite handy to zoom back and forth between columns of text and cells. However, it's also reconfigurable, which means that I can go ahead and reconfigure it to switch between tabs in a browser. And as a habitual internet user, I find this much more convenient. Now, the one thing that also I should mention that this actually has an additional button right here. It's not really indicative of such, but this actually is a button that defaults to the Alt-Tab configuration within Windows. It requires a little bit more force to press than some of the other buttons, and that's good because if you're resting your hand down there, you don't want to necessarily jump between tabs. You want to just only use it when it's appropriate. So if I had to pick between the two mice as far as comfort was concerned, I would definitely give the edge to the MX Master 2S from a right-handed point of view. As a lefty though, I would prefer the Surface Precision mouse. Now let's talk about software. Normally this would be an issue that we would pass over quite quickly, but in the case of the Surface Precision mouse and the Logitech MX Master 2S, this is actually a pretty big deal. Now, the first thing we have to point out is something that Microsoft does wrong, and that's to make its own utility software rather difficult to find. Now, the Microsoft Surface Precision mouse uses what's called the Microsoft Mouse and Keyboard Center. And normally what you would do is you would plug in the mouse, connect it via Bluetooth, and it would actually it would start right up. Microsoft makes you download it, and in fact the website that's in the instruction booklet doesn't exist. You actually have to Google it or Bing it, whatever your choice might be, and manually download it. Unfortunately, once you manually download it, you also have to run it in administrator mode. So for example, if you want to take a shortcut and just download and run it in the same process, it doesn't work. You have to re-download it. It's kind of a pain. Microsoft should have fixed this long ago, and it hasn't. Unfortunately though, it's only a one-time issue. Logitech uses what's called Logitech Options, and Logitech Options is much more convenient. You connect the mouse to Bluetooth, and a little pop-up pops up and invites you to install or download and install options. It just happens. It's much more convenient. It works as it should. However, with both though, Options and the Microsoft Mouse and Keyboard Center, there's a couple of things that both software packages allow you to do. One, of course, is simply to allow you to reconfigure buttons. With the Mouse and Keyboard Center, you can go ahead and reconfigure, again, left and right click buttons, the thumb buttons and so forth, and it allows you to switch the sensitivity as well. It's also, unfortunately, the only place you can check the battery life of the mouse itself. With the Logitech MX Master 2S, the Options software also allows you to reconfigure the buttons. It's a little bit more convenient. There seems to be a little bit more options. There's also an additional feature that allows you to sort of pair a control key to a button press. That gives you basically an additional level of configurability. But the most intriguing feature of both of these mice is the ability to go ahead and switch between PCs and to do so automatically. Most mice allow you to switch manually with a button. With both mice here, you can actually switch just by moving the mouse to the edge of the screen. So you can see I have control of the left-hand computer. And these are not separate screens, they're just separate computers. And what I can do is I can move the mouse to the right-hand side of the window. And what will happen is that the mouse will switch over to the opposite computer. So what makes this special? Right now, Smart Switch is a bit gimmicky. You can only switch the mouse between different PCs, not the keyboards, which means you have to use them. Logitech Flow, however, goes the extra mile. Now, for Flow, one thing that you'll need though is not only just a mouse like the MX Master 2S, but a keyboard as well. And for our purposes, we use the Logitech Craft, which is one of a small number of Flow-enabled Flow-enabled keyboards manufactured by Logitech. Flow's advantages though are twofold. For one thing, you can not only switch mice between PCs, but the keyboard as well. And this allows you to go ahead and take old tablets or old PCs and to create a unified workspace out of them. But it does something else too. It allows you to copy text between them, or copy files in general. So not only can you copy a snippet of text, but you can also copy a couple of JPEGs, or even an entire movie that takes up a couple of gigabytes. In the latter case though, I'd recommend using SneakerNet because a hard drive or a USB key is a much more effective way to transfer information than your wireless network. If there's any drawback to Flow though, it's that it's very sensitive to wireless security. At home, Flow worked fine. Well, after I turned off my wireless firewall. But here in the office, faced with a corporate IT department, Flow failed. I couldn't transfer anything back and forth, and in fact, I couldn't even move the mouse between PCs. So, if you are going to buy Flow, or a Logitech-enabled mouse and keyboard, consider it for home use. So the question is, which mouse do I prefer? Microsoft's Surface Precision Mouse is worth your money. It's comfortable, accessible to both righties and lefties, and it has a decent amount of configurability, as well as the smart switch options. However, Logitech's MX Master 2S is definitely a superior mouse. Not only is it more comfortable for right-handers, it offers a greater degree of flexibility, as well as the Logitech Flow software, which adds an additional dimension that the Surface Precision Mouse simply can't offer. If I had to choose between the two mice, the MX Master 2S would definitely win.